Don't pretend you don't recognize what's in my hand." His voice was steady, tight. The old man glared, sweat rolling down his temple. "That key, no one told you where it goes," the elder spat, lip curling. "Let me see it. You stole something, didn't you?" The boardroom smelled like burnt coffee and cologne. Suit jackets strained as bodies shifted. "You want the truth? I've got something better," he said, sliding the battered envelope across the lacquered table. The air crackled and a dozen eyes darted toward the envelope. "Stop right there," the elder barked, slamming one palm down. The echo ricocheted off glass and marble. "You listen to me." But hands were already moving, unwilling to obey. Before the vote, before the secrets, before any of them had summoned the nerve to raise their voices, the brothers were just two men driving through the flat, stifling heat, not yet knowing that every lie had a price. A trail of gravel spat from under the tires as Lewis swung the old Tundra hard through the sunken drive, the trailer rattling, initials painted over with half-hearted care. The Mississippi Delta sprawled out behind them in green-gold waves, ruinous fields swallowing small dreams for breakfast. Owen hunched in the passenger seat, hands tight on his phone, gums pressed white, lips thinner than ever. "Not one word," Lewis muttered, thumb drumming the cracked steering wheel. His jeans were 3 days unwashed. There was still duct tape on his duffel from the move out. He'd been fine with impossible, running out of cash, living above an abandoned bakery in Clarksdale, eating gas station sandwiches until the divorce finalized. His ex, Carrie, had come for everything that looked clean on paper. That prenup he'd signed with a shaking hand when love still meant sleep at night. It was ironclad. The judge hadn't even looked at him. "You're lucky you get to keep your name, Mr. McLemore," she joked. All he carried out was a bag, his brother, and a truck that spat rust if you looked sideways at it. At the orphanage's threshold, two men far past the age you picture in rooms like this, they stood in stiff silence. The place still reeked of pine cleaner and canned spaghetti. "You think she really picked us, Lou?" Owen finally whispered, voice cracking. "Is there anyone else left to pick?" Lewis mumbled, voice thick from a night spent staring at the ceiling. Then a stranger's voice, tense, clipped, cut through the quiet. Mr. McLemore, I'm from Proctor, Jameson and Reed. I'm here on Dr. Pendleton's behalf." His suit was the color of old pennies, his shoes too shiny, hair shellacked. He handed over an envelope sealed with brittle, shaking wax, a real key inside, heavy, metal warmed by time. "Lewis," Owen said, fingers trembling, "read it, out loud." "Mr. McLemore, it is with some sadness and much relief that I address you this way. Your grandmother meant for you to have this. The estate is yours, burden and grace both, if you can unlock its true door." Owen blinked, but Lewis just stared ahead. "The estate's not even worth the wood it's built from," the lawyer sniffed, already checking his phone. "You boys want the key, or should I ship it to wherever's left to ship?" A wave of old laughter rolled down the hallway's painted cinder block. "Ain't even enough out there to plant beans," someone whispered. Lewis pressed the key into his palm so hard he left an imprint. Hook 1, sharp as a fish spine, a key, a letter, and a promise no one else understood. If you've ever watched men in nice shoes collect the last pennies from under your bed and leave you with holes instead of hope, this story is for you. They left the orphanage feeling small and stripped, the Mississippi air sticking to them like the taste of loss. Owen opened the passenger window. "It's not like we got a choice, Lou," he said, almost apologetic, as if failing again was his doing. "You ever see a $4 inheritance before?" Lewis replied, voice thin as wire. They drove until the flickering neon of the Delta fell behind, through towns whose cotton gin ghosts peered from rotting warehouses. "So what's the plan?" Owen asked, as they rattled down the 2-lane, corn stubble brushing the left tire. "Unlock the damn thing," Lewis said. "Figure out what we lost this time." Silence, then Owen chewed at his thumbnail. "You ever think it should have been simpler? Just get what's yours, nobody else's business." Lewis grunted, head full of half-remembered stories their grandmother used to murmur on sticky evenings about how people in these parts kept secrets in dirt and steel, and never trusted the sun to bleach things out. After 2 hours, they limped onto the farm's gravel. Nothing moved but buzzards and their own doubts. The house, a pile of cypress boards with the windows gaping like pulled teeth, waited as if it recognized their footsteps. It was Owen who spotted the pickup, a battered '78 Ford sunken into mud behind the barn. "That it?" he said, nervous. "That must be the $4." Lewis bent, the grass itching his calves through torn denim. "You know old people, you hide things in what the world's already thrown away." He slid under the truck, the heat pressing the metal to his skin. Fingers brushed against a clumsy weld. His blood ran cold there, above the gas tank, a compartment that shouldn't belong. "Hand me the flashlight," he whispered. Owen's palm was sweaty, the beam bouncing across worn steel. Lewis pried the weld. Inside, dust, 2/4, a folded photo and a second key, this one dull bronze. But it was what was taped to the inside of the lid, a slip of faded paper and a dog tag, that stopped him dead. "She left us more than a field," he muttered. His voice caught. "Look at this, Owen, look at that name." "You don't mean—" Owen's voice dropped to a rasp. Lewis shook his head. "Not yet, but it's a start." They tumbled from under the Ford, hearts thudding. In Mississippi, secrets breed quick. Tonight, the truth would outpace the memory. Owen wanted to leave. "This place feels wrong, Lou, like someone's watching." Lewis glared at the horizon, jaw set. "Let's see where this key leads us," he said. The door of the house groaned open, swallowing them in pine mold dark. The next clue waited in silence. Inside, the old cabin still clung to smells of stale medicine and hot dust. Floorboards swelled in the delta's cruel humidity, paper curls in every corner. Owen hovered behind Lewis, eyes flicking at every shadow. "Quit it, you look like a cat in a bathtub," Lewis whispered, scanning the entry hall. He fished a rusted ring from the envelope, a second, smaller key, its teeth odd and pristine. To the basement, maybe. It slid into the lock beneath the stairwell with a soft, metallic sigh. "I never even knew she had a downstairs," Owen whispered. Lewis shrugged. Every family keeps something under their floorboards. Flashbacks stuttered behind his eyelids. Their grandmother, white hair tied back, stern as any preacher, telling stories about what men in this county did when forgiveness got hard to find. The space below, stiflingly close, smelled like thyme and old oil. Owen shuffled behind, nearly dropping his phone. "You okay down there?" Lewis asked, voice pitched low. "Nah," Owen croaked, "but that never stopped you before." They reached a thick concrete door with faded hospital tape across the knob. The bronze key trembled in Lewis's hand as he turned it, Owen's breath loud as rain beside him. The steel swung wide. Fluorescent bulbs flickered awake, casting their sickly light on a room that looked nothing like a farm cellar. Metal shelves lined with patient files, an ancient reel-to-reel recorder, a surgical kit rusting away, and, at the back, a battered strongbox with Dr. Pendleton engraved in flowing script. "Your inheritance," Owen hissed, almost bitter. Lewis knelt, working the lock. Inside was a folder labeled Oak River, 1973, brittle and grease-spotted. "What's that?" Owen asked, shifting from foot to foot. "Evidence," Lewis breathed, "and someone never wanted it found." Their skin prickled. Deep Delta night was crowding in. There would be no sleep tonight. Lewis yanked the folder free, hands trembling, heart hammering against ribs too familiar with disappointment. He laid out the contents on the sagging card table, flattening brittle edges with both hands. Owen hovered, eyes darting. "What's all this?" Old photographs, grainy shots of the Oak River pond, a group of men standing with lanterns, a shadow collapsed in tall grass. Police notes, initials scrawled in blue crayon. No one had told these stories in almost half a century, and yet. Owen's finger shook as he pointed. "Is that blood on the grass in this one?" Lewis turned the page. At the bottom of the stack, an index card handwritten by their grandmother. To be opened by my boys only. Trust who speaks for the living, not those who worship the dead." The handwriting, Owen whispered, choking up. She was scared. Lewis closed his fist tight. So were they. They leafed through statements, the preacher's name, the dates, a map drawn in shaking blue lines. Then, deeper inside the strongbox, a reel-to-reel tape, label faded but legible, Pendleton, Confession, 1973. The spool was brittle, but the tape intact. Owen glanced at his brother. "You think this is what they tried to buy for $4? Lewis didn't answer. His world had shrunk to the sound of old reels whispering names in the dark. Above, the wind pressed at the house. The hour of reckoning was racing toward them. They scrambled from the basement as the sky began to purple. Lewis's mind was a tangle, names, faces, a sense of something coiled for 40 years finally snapping open. They needed help, guidance. 2 counties over, the only one in town who ever stood up to the church elders was a woman with a phone always in her hand. Marla James, part-time legal assistant to the DA and 3-time wear-out-your-knees divorcee. "I know Pendleton's reputation," Marla said, her drawl scoured by cigarettes. "But that key you handed me, that's an evidence locker tag, county lockup. No one's been down there since Carter was president." A court hearing loomed Monday morning, and dawn was already licking the edges of their night. Lewis unclipped the dog tag, laying it on Marla's desk. "What do you know about Oak River, 73? Marla didn't blink. "I know a respected man was taken one night and never found. I know there were stories about the elder pushing the church's money around, buying up land. Pendleton was going to blow the whistle, then she clammed up, moved out here, and never spoke again. That tape could make a dead man dance, Lewis." Owen shifted uneasily. "So why give it to us?" "She didn't trust the usual saints," Marla replied, voice flat. "You've got 3 days before the court slams this door forever. That's if the elder doesn't find out you're playing with fire." Lewis looked at his brother, voice thin but urgent. "You think I can beat him, Marla?" She narrowed her eyes. "Not alone, and not if you get yourself dead before Monday." The hush that followed was heavy as river mud. "But if what's on that tape is what I think, it won't just end a sermon. It'll end everything he built." Lewis let her words settle in the space between heartbeats. "Then let's make him sweat," he whispered. Lightning split the sky as they left Marla's office, her words running wild in their heads. They barely reached the truck before the first fat drops rattled the roof. The judge would count minutes, not pleas. The timeline was set. They'd hoped for solace, but ended up with dynamite. In the deep night that followed, Owen lay staring at the ceiling of their borrowed room, nervously clicking the tape's box open and shut. "You think we found what we need," he muttered, breaking the silence. Lewis didn't answer. He'd spent too long letting others decide what deserved to be called valuable. He knew the elder wasn't sleeping. Men who built empires on old bones never did. Morning brought more rot, yellowish light spilling onto the remains of a once grand house, ghostly cotton sprigs wagging in the breeze. Lewis knew they had to act, but the opposition wasn't silent, it was coming for them. It came by way of heavy footsteps on the porch, a whistle that turned their bones to dust. The elder himself, white mane slicked down, dark suit hanging loose, mouth twisting as if smelling something rotten. "You boys think you're welcome here," he barked, voice bouncing off cracked siding. "You're about to get burned." Lewis stepped into the yard. "You give us the respect we're owed, or I guarantee this'll haunt you." The elder's eyes narrowed. "You don't know half of what's buried here. You trust an old woman's ramblings over men of God." Owen, arms folded, tried to shrink. "We know about Oak River," he shot back, hands shaking. "And I know plenty, son," the elder replied, voice greasy and low. "Walk away, there's still time." Lewis met his gaze. "You forgot to pay off everyone 40 years ago." The elder turned, gravel crunching, too controlled for a man on the verge. "This isn't your farm," he spat. "It's church land now, and come Monday a judge is going to toss you out on your pride." Their nerves frayed, but with that the lie was exposed, daylight flooding what the elder couldn't stamp out. Lewis fell back, not defeated, but staking the ground with quiet fury. "Let him try," he said, voice steel bright. All that night the brothers pored over the evidence, organizing files, mapping out movements and names. The spools from the old tape squealed, but Marla arrived with a battered player. "This is your moment, boys," she said, sliding the tape in and hitting play. A woman's voice, broken, saturated with fear, crackled out, naming the elder, describing in haunted detail the night at Oak River Pond. Marla listened, breath sharp. "You get this into the DA's hands before Monday, you don't just save the farm, you burn down an empire." Owen's jaw set. "You think they'll really do something?" Marla's reply was clinical. "If you were a board of directors and this was your CEO," she gestured at the evidence, "you devote him out before the feds even knocked. Church or company, money cares about contagion." Lewis took a deep breath. "So you're saying the old man's finished?" Marla leaned in. "If you want justice, stick to the process. If you want revenge, well, that's a different tape." Lewis met his brother's eyes. "We go for justice." She didn't hide that box for nothing. As the hours ground down, their plan grew sharper. They'd bring the evidence to the DA, show up at the boardroom Monday, and demand their hearing. Every file, every map, every muddy photograph would be presented in daylight. Time would either be the executioner or the deliverer. There was no middle road now. Monday came sweltering and tense, the courthouse crawling with men and women in pressed suits and quiet desperation. Lewis and Owen approached the pristine conference room, sunbeams slicing through blinds. A table longer than their old kitchen, surrounded by the shareholders, the elder at the far end, hands folded over a gleaming Bible. The boardroom was a collision of thick Southern accents and cold corporate politeness. The brothers took their seats. Marla, head high, sat to their left. "You're out of order," hissed the elder, but his voice betrayed a tremor. Lewis stared him down, then looked to the chairman at the center of the table. "We have evidence that changes everything. I request the right to contest." A heavy pause. The old men shifted, tension thick enough to bite. The chairman nodded. "Present your case, Mr. McLemore." Lewis stood. Across the polished table, the man who stole their future looked smaller than rumor could ever make him. He reached into his coat, retrieving the battered envelope. His palm was sweaty, his voice clear. "Don't pretend you don't recognize what's in my hand." The elder bristled, words snapping. "That key, no one told you where it goes. Let me see it. You stole something, didn't you?" The room was silent except for the hum of the AC and the shuffle of bored fear. "You want the truth? I've got something better," Lewis said, placing the envelope down. "It's just dramatics. Don't listen to this fool," muttered the elder, but his eyes never left Lewis's hands. "I told you, stop right there," the elder barked, leaning over the table, voice nearly shrill. "You think these men care for your drivel." A memory of the tapes, of their grandmother's voice trembling, Lewis locked eyes with the board. "I present signed statements, photos, and an audio recording, proving that 40 years ago, the man you call elder orchestrated a crime at Oak River." A gasp rippled. Someone whispered, "Is that true?" Chair legs creaked. Marla spoke now, calm and deadly. "If this body does not act, the district attorney will, and so will every headline from here to New Orleans. Do you want to be complicit?" The elder pounded the table, neck veins bulging. "You have no right." Owen, for once, didn't shrink. "We have every right. You stole from our family, lied to your own, and built this place on bones." The eldest director, stooped but resolute, lifted a trembling hand. "I call for an immediate vote on the question of leadership and control of all elder holdings." Murky silence followed, then one by one hands raised, not a single voice for the elder. He staggered back from his chair, face pale, lips working silently as if to summon grace that would not attend him. A younger member glared. "You shamed us all," she muttered. In the hall, police officers waited as the DA walked in, a thin man in a crisp blue suit. He lifted the tape and the folder. "This is official now," he declared. Boardroom protocol fell away. A legacy's worth of lies unraveled in the time it took to swap a chair for an empty seat. Lewis ignored the turmoil. He looked up, breathing in the sharp tang of old air and new hope. Through the glass, the cotton fields shimmered, unburdened by secrets at last. The aftermath unfolded brutally fast. The elder was removed by board vote, title and power dissolved. His mansion, once a symbol of piety, was seized and reviewed by state auditors as the DA's case sped ahead. Headlines screamed scandal. The Mississippi Chronicle's front page blazoned with "Church Elder Exposed in Oak River COVERUP." Donations shriveled, the congregation divided, and his closest allies scattered overnight. Marla nodded grimly as the news spread. "Whole towns exhaling," she said. "People forget, the ones who shout the loudest got closets rattling hardest." The state evaluated the Pendleton property and declared the inheritance valid. The judge handed it over at last, not in cash, but in what could still be rebuilt. Owen and Lewis started slow. Contractors refused at first, superstition clung like mildew. But artists hungry for haunted beauty drifted south, painting murals over crumbling brick, opening tiny studios in rooms that stank of must and ghost stories. Tour buses followed. The ghost town's ruins, no longer buried, bore witness to something unfamiliar, creation, not shame. Lewis stood in the center of the sunny square, fresh paint glimmering on shop fronts, breath caught between pain and possibility. "Never thought I'd see a day like this," Owen murmured, half a smile on his rough face. "Neither did she," Lewis replied, eyes fixed on the horizon. They had lost much: blood, money, easy trust, but what remained was sturdy for having been remade by their own hands. Sometimes the only thing harder than escaping the sins of the past is building something worth inheriting. In the Delta Light, two brothers learned that justice is not a clean handover. It's the act of making ruin worthy again, one brick, one lyric, one rebuilt town at a time. If you're still listening, maybe you too have buried something more durable than gold. Lean in, the story isn't over. Spring thickened across the delta, sun gold on swamp grass, air syrupy with wisteria, the last hints of winter freezing at dawn but melting away by noon. Word traveled fast, as it always did, first in whispers under the eaves, then louder as if the very land needed to shake off its silence. The elder retreated, not just from the board or his stolen lands, but from public memory. He was seen only rarely, a silhouette at the bus depot, muttering into a battered cell phone, as alone as a preacher who's finally met his own gospel. Lewis and Owen found themselves adrift in the aftermath. Their names returned to them, but the weight of history not so easily dropped. Some wounds, like old wells, echoed long after they'd gone dry. Their days began at sunrise, swinging hammers with hands that remembered both defeat and defiance. Their nights ended deep in spreadsheets or paint, the ghosts of the house softer now, less cruel, sometimes no more than a single creak behind the kitchen door. It was in the small things that peace began to germinate. Lewis spent long hours sanding the porch rail smooth, squinting at the bright paint he and Owen splashed across old boards. The sound of it, rhythmic and mundane, soothed his nerves in a way the court victory never had. Owen, shy as a shadow at first, surprised himself by managing the accounts, organizing volunteers. He even started whistling again, low and off-key, as he inventoried boxes of donated books and keepsakes. One sweltering afternoon, Marla came by with lemonade and newsprint clippings under her arm. "Boys," she called, letting the screen door squeal shut behind her. "You made editorials clear up to Memphis. That's you right there under Delta Sun's Defy Legacy, Inheritance or Reckoning." She waved the newspaper like a flag. You ever think you'd be headline material? Lewis took the paper, grinning, and Owen peered over his shoulder in wonder. The photo was blurry but unmistakable, the two of them in front of the newly scrubbed house, the broad delta yawning out behind them like a secret finally unearthed. Marla found her way to the kitchen, settling in with her glass. Don't let it go to your heads. Town's still got memory longer than the river curve. They'll watch you twice before trusting you once. Owen nodded, folding and unfolding the newsprint. I keep thinking about what Gran wrote, trust who speaks for the living, not those who worship the dead. Reckon that means us now. Lewis thought about this as he looked at the page, at their uncertain half-smiles, at the background of cypress and sky. Does if we choose it to, or we just patch roofs and plant peach saplings and call that enough? Marla smirked. You ought to give yourselves more credit. Not everyone faces down a man like the elder and wins. A comfortable silence settled in, broken only by the distant drone of a mower and the thunk of a hammer on stubborn wood. That weekend brought the first spring festival since before the elder's reign, a tentative thing organized mostly by young families and old-timers in faded ball caps. Food trucks rolled in, painting the air with the smell of catfish and sweet dough. Local musicians gathered on the cracked steps of the old church to coax blues from battered guitars. Children skipped between the booths, flower crowns askew. Lewis and Owen worked a table themselves, selling jars of preserved pears and jars of river clay painted by the hands of new artists. Every so often, Lewis caught people studying him, as if waiting for him to sprout horns or wings. Most just nodded quietly, some with cautious kindness. Midday, the line slowed as a stooped woman in a sun hat approached. Her face was leathered and sharp with memory, her cane rapped on the asphalt. "You're the McLemore boys," she said, voice clear as a bell. "Yes, ma'am," Owen replied, offering his shyest smile, the one he'd learned as a child for nuns and librarians. She set a glass jar on the table, a button collection, blue and green, mostly mother of pearl. Her fingers trembled as she pushed it toward Owen. "Your grandmother gave me these back when things were ugly. I kept them like she asked, figured now they belong to you." Lewis blinked at the jar, the buttons glimmered old as river stones. "Why did she give them to you?" The woman shrugged, her eyes softening. "Said I was the only soul who'd outlive her pride. I think she meant for you to build something with them, remind folks there's more to inheritance than land and debt." Owen stammered out a thank you, but the words fizzed away as the woman retreated, cane tapping a steady metronome. Lewis pocketed one of the buttons, rolling its smooth coolness between his fingers. "Should we do something with these?" Owen asked, voice uncertain. Lewis studied him, then nodded. "Let's put them on the map mural in the square," he suggested. "Let each neighbor stick a button where their family is from. Show people where the living belong, not where the dead left us to rot." The idea caught fire. That week, as painters finished their day's work on the collapsing brick facades, children and grandmothers, farmhands and waitresses stopped by to press a button onto the mural, from as far as Memphis or as close as the junkyard out back. The board filled up quickly, a riot of tiny glowing circles that drew strangers together, pointing and telling stories that were equal parts lie, memory, and folk song. One dusk, as the last button was placed, Marla wandered up. She nodded at the gleaming map. "Never thought I'd see the day this town was proud of its real map, not just the one the old men drew to keep the rest of us out." Lewis exhaled slowly. "Sometimes what you inherit isn't half as important as what you pass on." She clucked her tongue. "That'll make a nice line for the next article." Owen joined them, wiping his hands on his jeans. "New life's not so bad, huh?" Lewis looked at him, sunburned, smiling, shoulders finally unbowed. "No, brother, not so bad at all." Months went by. Contractors stopped flinching at the mention of the house, and in late July, the county sent a survey team to measure the property line. The men in orange vests waved at Lewis and Owen as if they'd lived there all their lives. With the pendulum of fate swinging in their favor, Lewis began to plan bigger things. Classes in the parlor for kids to learn music and painting, a food co-op in one of the old barns, even a blues show every third Friday on the courthouse steps. The local paper documented it all, meticulous as an archivist. Tourists began coming, too, first a trickle, then a crawl, then steady buses, camera flashes flickering across the porch. Some chased stories of scandal, others came for the legends, but a few just wanted a plate of beans and cornbread and to watch the sun drop like a burning penny behind the cotton fields. Owen, for all his reluctance, discovered he could talk to crowds. He started telling their story at town meetings and high school assemblies, careful to separate fact from rumor. He always ended by quoting their grandmother, "When the past can't speak, it writes across land, across people. Make your lines count." Lewis learned the rhythm of management, the plodding pace of progress, the booms and stumbles, comforted at night by the knowledge that the house no longer sounded so hollow. Still, not everything healed easy. Some townsfolk, those with longest ties to the elders' church, kept their distance. They muttered in grocery aisles, avoided eye contact, and sometimes trashed the new murals in whispered complaints about outsider nonsense. The justice meted out to the elder left behind a vacuum, and not everyone agreed that the empty pulpit was better than a corrupt one. One evening, a knock came at the door just as Lewis was finishing a ledger. On the step was a young boy, 10 or 11, wild hair, eyes dark as river silt. "Mr. Lewis," the boy said. Lewis crouched to eye level. "That's me, you looking for your folks?" The boy shook his head. "Mama sent me to bring you something, said it was in the attic after the old pastor left." He offered up a pale blue shoebox. Lewis took it gently. "What's your name, son?" "Junior," he said, shy. "Mama says don't open it till it's just you and your brother." Lewis nodded. "You want some lemonade before you go?" The boy grinned, took the offered cup, and disappeared into the lengthening shadows. Inside, Lewis found Owen in the small office. They sat on the floor, knees drawn up, the shoebox between them. Inside, wrapped in a yellowed handkerchief, were dozens of letters, some addressed to Pendleton, some to their grandmother. At the bottom, 2 items, a single church bulletin from 1973 and a photograph. The picture made Lewis's chest ache, a younger version of their grandmother, smiling awkwardly beside a much younger version of the elder, standing on what was now their porch, a laurel wreath held between them. The edges of the photo were burnt as if someone had tried, half-heartedly, to destroy it. Owen lifted a letter, reading aloud in a quivering voice. "Pendleton, I fear we are nothing but keepers of someone else's sins. Still, perhaps the boys will forgive us one day if we save them a little pain, if we keep the old bones buried just deep enough." The letter's looping signature was unmistakable, their grandmother's careful hand. They read until the sun went down, until the evidence of decades tangled in love and regret littered the floor around them. Lewis finally spoke. "You think she ever wanted us to know the full truth?" Owen shook his head. "No one wants their ghosts let out. Maybe she just hoped we'd do better." Lewis smiled softly. "Maybe that's all anyone can hope for." Come fall, the harvest festival overflowed with color and music. The square was dotted with food stands, the mural glittered with polished buttons, and the old cypress house was hung with fairy lights. Lewis stood at the edge of the crowd, hands in pockets, grinning as a knot of teenagers rehearsed an old blues number in front of their grandmother's porch. The church steeple, once so menacing, shone pale and shy in the dusk, unadorned by banners or boasts. Marla found him as the band started up. "You belong here, Lewis, both of you." He gave her a long look, maybe for the first time. She smiled, squeezing his arm. "Don't let the ghosts fool you. This is your story now." Later, as the festival faded and the stars began their slow Mississippi spin, Lewis joined Owen on the porch steps. The air was thick with the scent of turned earth and wood smoke. Across the street the mural gleamed, 100 tiny buttons mapped across it like constellations. "You ready to call this home?" Owen asked, voice low. Lewis looked out at the crowd thinning toward the highway, at the house finally silent, at the land scrubbed clear of secrets. "Yeah," he said, "I think we made it." Owen nudged him. "Ain't no curse in the world beats that." Lewis slung an arm around his brother's shoulders, and for a time they sat in perfect hush, the world breathing with them, no longer waiting for the past to finish speaking. Inside, the letters and photos remained, an archive now, not a burden. Their grandmother's careful notes, the confessions from the old church, even the faded dog tag, all safely boxed, names catalogued for the generation after. And when visitors stopped by, chasing legends or looking for a cup of strong Delta coffee, Lewis or Owen would sit on the porch, open the rewards of inheritance, pear preserves, old stories, laughter, and offer more than the sum of their pain. They knew the cost of silence. They depaid it, but they'd also rewritten the reckoning, letting the farm, the town, and themselves turn from graveyard to garden. If you pass through Clarksdale one summer night, you'll see the porch light flickering over the cypress door, music winding through the air thick with honeysuckle, a map of bright buttons catching every falling star. And if you knock, hesitant, lost, searching for your own inheritance, someone will open the door, dust off a seat, and say, "Sit down, the story isn't over, not for you, not ever."